Welcome to the Green Room, where we discuss ways to green up our world. Marc Williams is manager of the Western Washtenaw Recycling Authority, located in Chelsea. Today we'll be getting an update on what's happening in the recycling world. Marc, welcome to the show.
Barbara, thank you for having me again. Good to be back.
So about a year ago, the first thing I think we'll talk about first again today, China, and the problems with them refusing to buy our recyclable materials. How have things changed in this last year?
Well, over the past year, I believe the impact was a little bit more shocking to everybody than what we originally thought it would be. I know commodity prices dropped down so low to where 700 tons of mixed paper won't even cover a pay period for us. That kind of creates challenges to where you have to look for other options to create revenue. But they are taking some material, just not raw recyclables. It has to be processed through one stage already. So.
I didn't know they were still taking anything.
Yeah, they'll take it as like a pulp instead of just mixed paper or a pellet plastic, but not bales of plastic. So
you're having to put a lot more time and money into preparing it for them.
The mills end up putting more time into it, which cuts away from what we have, what revenue we get from the mills.
So it does have repercussions. Now, is there any silver lining?
Yes, it's created a lot of facilities to upgrade their material or sorting equipment, along with create new ideas for what we can use recyclables for, and allowing that is kind of bringing a silver lining to with the recycling industry. So.
Like, are there more efforts to like zero waste and reduce?
Well, yes, there is more efforts to zero waste, along with looking at carbon neutral plans for cities and towns, and that's really good. And that needs something that needs to be addressed. And I think this is kind of pushing it to be addressed.
Before the show, you were telling me about some of the carbon implications of some of these things.
Oh, yeah, for the different commodities. I mean, so recycling a tin can or aluminum can uses roughly 97% less energy than using raw materials to make an aluminum can.
That's a lot.
Yes, I know recycling 15 glass bottles, they say saves enough energy to power a laptop for a day or an air conditioner for an hour. So if you can recycle it and your MRF has the means to make sure it's recycled, it's definitely saving a lot.
And having something that's easily recycled, because I was looking at some of those liquid containers that are made of many, many layers, like 6 layers, and apparently it takes a lot of energy to pulp that into, I guess they need a lot of heat and such, so there's a lot of energy implications to this whole process. So one question I'm sure you get is, why should we recycle if it's not a money maker anymore?
Well, I believe I read over the years that it takes 1.8 years to regenerate what we use in 1 year. So there's that reason alone. Also, the recycling industry is a much larger industry than people believe. I want to say it's like $265 billion a year industry.
Wow.
Which is very close to the automotive manufacturing industry. So anytime you lose an industry like that, you're already going to hurt the economy, along with jobs and everything of that nature.
Yeah, and we don't want to live next to landfills.
Yes, that is true. You don't want to live next to the landfills and all the issues that those might generate around Ann Arbor, along with all the other townships that have them.
So it tends to be kind of expensive to recycle, and what are the reasons for that? For instance, labor costs. Why is there so much labor involved?
Well, it tends to be more expensive just due to the fact that recycling, unlike taking trash to a landfill, you're handling it many times. So, you have to pick it up, haul it to a MRF, run it down a sorting system, sort it, bale it, store it, ship it. So right there, you're already handling it 7 times or so, whereas a landfill, you're just picking it up and taking it right to a hole and burying it. So that creates a labor expense, along with all the equipment that goes into processing the recyclables. the equipment's not cheap. Adding pretty much anything to a single stream sorting system is $500,000 or more. But that's kind of what needs to be happening to the facilities to make sure they're generating a quality product and making sure they're recycling as much as they can.
And the workers have to spend a lot of time taking out things that aren't supposed to be in the mix, right?
Yes.
What they call them contaminants?
Yes, yes. So about 20%, maybe more. I know at RMF it's about 20% of any material coming in is already trash from the beginning. A lot of people kind of have a wishful thinking on something being recyclable, that they throw it in the recycling because they wish it was recyclable, but it's not always the case. So
20% is a lot of time to be, I mean, it must take a lot of time to get that out. What are some of the worst things that you get in there, or some of the most annoying? Or
The worst would be probably when people put food in there, but that just creates an odor. But as far as harmful to the machines and causing the most downtime is plastic bags, garden hoses, clothing. All those get wrapped inside of our equipment. We spend probably hour to hour and a half a day removing them just from the equipment so it sorts properly, and then we do our end of the day cleanup as well.
And that's got to be dangerous to be climbing up there and trying to pull out. I mean, that's big equipment, right?
Yeah, you have to lock everything out, and the guys put in their safety stuff, and then you got to cut it out, and then you got to get back out of the machine. So very time consuming.
And the contaminants that just would simply ruin a batch, I mean, because you need to get paid for pure, I mean, relatively pure batches of recycled materials, right?
Yes. Anything that people put in, like if it's a paint can that's recyclable, but it has paint in it, that paint spills out all over the paper. Now all that paper's ruined. If they don't catch it on the line, it ends up going in the bale. Now you have to get rid of a whole bale because they won't accept it. So there's a lot of things that spill out that can cause contaminants, and then there's also just the large burden items that can cause issues. But the larger items tend to be easier to remove, as where the liquids and other things like that are much more difficult.
You were saying that about once a month you actually clean the place out?
So it's actually, we try to do it once a quarter where we completely empty out our building, just to make sure all the material is removed, start fresh, do a deep cleaning, and start all over. Recycling is kind of a lot of MRFs have a tendency to get real dirty, and the cleaner you can keep them, the more enjoyable it is, the more people want to actually come there and work, and so on.
Makes me think we really need to keep our jars and cans clean, because otherwise you're working in a place that's stinky and sticky and yuck.
Yeah, yes, we do. I mean, think about it. If you smell a compost bin, if it hasn't been cleaned out, now just imagine tons of that every day. Then, you know, so yes, we do.
One thing you mentioned to me was the change in our shopping habits, like the mail order business with all that cardboard.
Yes, we are living in the Amazon era, it seems to be like, where everything we get comes to our doorstep in a box, and inside of another box, and then inside of another box. So then, not only that, does that make it a kind of a more difficult stream for us to sort and process, it also comes with a lot more bubble wrap and styrofoam and things that need to be removed from the boxes. So all that cardboard has to be removed from the paper. It also takes up more space in our building, more space on our conveyors. So you think you're running the same amount, but really it's less volume, or more volume and less mass to it. So it's taking up more space. So you're actually having to run it more to get the same amount of volume.
Do a lot of people not break up their boxes, take the styrofoam out? Because you don't recycle the styrofoam, right?
No, we don't. We just don't have the space and capacity to recycle styrofoam. There are places that do accept it, but no, a lot of people have gotten a habit of nesting all their stuff inside of boxes, and well, they'll put all the recyclables inside of one thing, and then it gets crushed inside of one of the trucks, and even it creates more challenges.
Yeah. So a lot of people say to me, is our recycling really getting recycled? How do you answer that?
Well, I can speak for our facility, yes it is. And I'd like to think that every other facility is doing the same as well. 80% of our revenue comes from product sales, so we wouldn't be around to have a facility if we weren't actually making sure our material gets back into the market.
Well, one of the things that people were most concerned about getting, they were worried that it wasn't being recycled, was glass. Is that recycled at your facility?
Yes, we aren't able to meet the quality of quality specs on glass if it comes to our single stream system, but through our roll-off containers, we are able to. I know this month alone we did 90 tons of glass, so it was quite a challenge, but yes, we got that done. So, and I think last year we did 147 tons of it. So, I mean, 3 years ago we weren't be able to do any of that. So, it's really been important to us to make sure we make glass get recycled.
So when you say your roll-off containers, are people coming and dumping their glass, collecting it at home and then driving it there?
Yes, we have 10 drop-off stations. They're unmanned drop-off stations. We have 30-yard roll-off containers. The containers have a separate compartment for glass. We wanted to give people the option to recycle glass if they're willing to make a little bit more of an effort. It's a lot of work, but it's something that, you know, glass started the recycling movement. It can be recycled an infinite number of times, unlike paper, so it's important to us to make sure that glass is being recycled.
And the sand it's made out of isn't exactly a renewable resource. So.
No, it is not. Yes, it goes into sand, sandblasting material, fiberglass, and everything like that.
So what happens to the glass after it's, you know, taken from your facility?
Well, our glass is on a backhaul, so trucks come out of Chicago and go all the way up north, and as they come back, they'll either stop at grocery stores and pick up bottled glass, or they'll stop by our facility and pick up the glass. From there, it's taken back to a facility in Chicago. From there, they crush it. It's sorted out between, ours is all mixed glass, but they do have ones where they sort out between clear and colored glass. Glass is a very expensive recycling process just due to the wear and tear it does on equipment. I mean, it's like running sandpaper over everything you own for countless hours a day. From there, it's broken up into very fine pieces, where some of it then is melted back into making glass bottles, and some of it is used for other materials as well.
You mentioned earlier that aluminum is really important to recycle because it's so energy intensive to make virgin aluminum, or take virgin aluminum and make it into a product. So what happens to our aluminum cans that we recycle?
Our aluminum is baled. Once it's baled, it actually goes to a recycling facility that takes metal, like a scrap yard, and they shred it so they can get the most volume into the truck. From when they shred it, they take it to a smelting plant, I believe it is, and then they'll take it there and they'll heat it and melt it down into whatever they're using it for. Sometimes they'll melt it down into almost like flat stock aluminum, or they'll melt it down and be able to send it back to bottle producers. So.
I bet some of it's made into aluminum foil. All I know is I've purchased aluminum foil that says made from recycled aluminum.
Yes.
How about things like clothing? Because I always wonder, you know, I try to donate everything that's usable, and actually I'll sew things, you know, make sure the buttons are on and stuff, and I'll give them to a resale shop. But if they're stained or torn, you know, beyond repair, then what can we do with those?
So recycled clothing goes almost through the same process as household recycling, where it goes down a conveyor. It's sorted out by the type of thread it is, whether it's denim or another type of linen. From there, they'll take it, separate it out, shred it, try to get the strings out of it, shred it down to that point. Sometimes they'll add string to it, and then restring it as yarn, and be able to sell it back to make clothing again.
Wow.
They just have to re-dye it.
Gosh, I didn't know that. But you don't want clothing put in your recycling, right?
No, we do not.
Yeah.
We provide clothing recycling drop-offs at all of our bin sites. they're right next to our bins and labeled clothing, so a lot of people tend to think we're all the same company, so they'll get there one way or another, but it's not quite the case.
Yeah. Again, all that labor to pull it out of the mix is not a good thing, and wrapping around the equipment. You gave me some things that you hope for the future, or recommendations, suggestions. One of them was that you would like to see manufacturers make their products to be easily recyclable.
Yes, I did. So the majority of recycling that happens in people's kitchens, just because a lot of times your kitchen tends to be very close to where your recycling bin is. That is also where a lot of the low grade or low demand recycling comes from, whether it's the little plastic that your strawberries come in or something along those lines. If they could make it into a much easier commodity to recycle, or make sure it gets back into the marketplace, along with, or out of a recycle container that already is in demand. So it might be more expensive for them, but if it's already a commodity that mills want, then it makes it much easier for us to, make sure it's getting recycled and makes it back into mills.
So you mean like the little logo has the different numbers, so some numbers are more valuable than others, right?
Yes, ones and twos usually are the most valuable and are easiest to make sure they make it back into a commodity, or make it back into a recycling stream. When you get to the 3s and 7s, that's where we've had a lot more of a challenge to get those recyclables back into the market. We have been working with a couple different places on trying to pull off and start a separate sort for those, but a lot of them would want all mixed together, and right now it's just not financially viable for us to do that. So
it reminds me, you're hoping to have things easily recyclable. Reminds me when I read the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act that's been recently introduced, because they do have that as one of their goals. Some of the other goals are to use, well, not goals, but mandates, if this bill were to be passed, would be that they use recycled content, they pay for recycling for their plastic products, that we get a national bottle bill, and that certain single-use plastic products that aren't recyclable are banned. So there's, it seems like a lot's going on lately in terms of plastics. People are getting kind of fed up with how much plastic is in our environment. You mentioned that you would love it if the different websites for the different recycling facilities would list what they take. So people, well, they already list what they take, but if they didn't, you said if they didn't take it, they would note where you could go to.
Yes, I would like to start something where we can kind of all piggyback off each other's websites and give the information out to people that are taking the time to look and see. Some people tend to think, well, they know where it's at, they'll figure it out. But if it's right there while they're looking for it, and then click on it and leads them right to where they need to go to make sure it's recycled, it'd be a great help instead of, costing us time and funds to make sure it gets back to the right facility. And whatever helps us, the other companies could do as well. So stuff that's being left there, they don't take, can be sent off to us for recycling, and vice versa.
Yeah, I would love that. It would make things a lot easier. So in terms of the future for recycling in Washtenaw County and the state, have you any thoughts of what the future might hold?
Yes, I know the county's done a lot with coming up with the waste not, and they're trying to implement goals that they want to meet and time frames. From that, it kind of helps us as a MRF to come up with ideas on how to do that. I know the state of Michigan also did recycling improvement grants that they've sent out, and I want to say it's like $1.5 million they're investing in improving recycling infrastructure in the state of Michigan. From there, it will assist with facilities upgrading their equipment to handle more volume and process more volume faster. And that right there will help us reach the goals that have been outlined in the Washtenaw.
So current trends, are we going up or down in terms of recycling lately?
Well, for the state of Michigan, I believe our recycling participation has been relatively stagnant for the last couple of years, and if not dropping. That's kind of why there's been so many initiatives to try and upgrade recycling equipment and processing methods in the state of Michigan. Also, we tend to have a lower tip fee than a lot of states at landfills, so a lot of places are going the route of, we're not going to invest the money in our recycling facility, we'll just get rid of it, or landfill it, which isn't the right way to do it.
Yeah. So where can people find out more information about your facility?
Well, you can go to www.recycles.org. From there, you'll have a list of upcoming events like the County Cleanup Day, or we'll have a list of what we take, don't accept. We usually have somebody on there. If you have any questions, you can email them, and they'll get back to you very shortly. So,
great. Well, thank you for all you do to help make recycling more efficient and easy, and it's really great work.
thank you for having me.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
So for this show and all our Green Room shows, please go to washtenaw.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.